The Tiger was not just a tank, it was a nightmare cast in steel. From the moment Allied troops first encountered it on the Eastern Front and later in North Africa, stories spread like wildfire. Soldiers whispered about a machine that seemed immune to their shells, a beast that could destroy a Sherman from over a mile away while shrugging off return fire. German propaganda only amplified this fear, portraying the Tiger as invincible, a symbol of technological superiority that kept enemies awake at night. To the men on the ground, it was not just a machine, but a psychological weapon.
Allied crews quickly learned that confronting a Tiger meant entering a game rigged against them. Reports circulated of single Tigers holding off entire units, grinding Allied advances to a halt. Its 88mm gun was so precise and devastating that Sherman crews joked grimly about their tanks being Ronsons, like the cigarette lighter. They caught fire with one hit. This dark humor masked very real terror. Many knew that if a Tiger spotted them first, their chances of survival were slim.
On the German side, tank crews felt a different rush. Driving a Tiger meant wielding power that seemed unmatched. Some spoke of the confidence it gave them, a sense that they could dominate any battlefield. But even among German soldiers, whispers grew. The tank was complex, prone to breakdowns, and difficult to mass-produce. Still, in combat, these flaws were invisible to the enemies, facing its roaring cannon and thick armor.
The myth of the Tiger grew larger than the machine itself. For Allied infantry, hearing the rumble of its engine was enough to freeze them in place. For tank crews, spotting its silhouette across the fields of Europe meant calculating whether to fight or flee. This aura of terror set the stage perfectly for what would come next. A new American tank designed to finally challenge the Tiger's dominance. Few could imagine that the myth, built on fear and steel, was about to be shattered.
The Americans entered Europe with confidence, but that confidence was tied to a tank that was never designed to fight monsters. The M4 Sherman was fast, reliable, and easy to produce, but against German heavy armor, it was a lamb sent to slaughter. In open combat, Shermans could swarm and outmaneuver, yet when a Tiger or Panther appeared, even numerical superiority often meant nothing. American crews knew that their 75mm guns could barely scratch the armor of these giants, and even the upgraded 76mm often failed except at close range. The imbalance was terrifyingly clear.
For Sherman crews, the battlefield became a psychological ordeal. Veterans recalled the sickening moment when they spotted a Tiger on the horizon, knowing their only chance was to flank, distract, or sacrifice one tank to buy time for another. Many spoke of feeling like they were fighting in tin cans. A single German shell could burn through the thin armor, turning the Sherman into a death trap. Survivors described the panic of scrambling out as flames consumed their vehicle, while comrades were trapped inside. Every encounter carved deep scars, not only on the battlefield, but also in the minds of the men sent into battle.
High command was well aware of the problem. Reports poured in from the front lines, pleading for a tank that could go toe-to-toe with the German beasts. Yet politics, logistics, and overconfidence delayed action. The Sherman had been good enough in North Africa and against weaker German units, but in the hedgerows of France and the forests of the Ardennes, the illusion shattered. America's arsenal of democracy suddenly looked outdated.
This growing desperation created a tense backdrop. Soldiers and commanders alike wondered how long could they continue to fight an enemy who seemed to own the battlefield. The answer came late, but it came with force. The introduction of the Pershing, a machine that promised to finally change the balance. The stage was set for an iron confrontation that would shock both sides. This growing desperation created a tense backdrop. Soldiers and commanders alike wondered how long could they continue to fight an enemy who seemed to own the battlefield. The answer came late, but it came with force. The introduction of the Pershing,
a machine that promised to finally change the balance. The stage was set for an iron confrontation that would shock both sides.
The concept for the M26 Pershing was bold: heavier armor, a more powerful gun, and better survivability for the crew. But designing it was one thing, getting it approved was another. Some in the military believed the Sherman was good enough and feared slowing down production lines to create a new design. The war effort thrived on numbers, and building a complex heavy tank seemed risky. As a result, the Pershing's development stalled in endless testing and redesigns, while soldiers in Europe begged for something better.
By late 1944, the urgency could no longer be ignored. German Panthers and Tigers dominated the battlefield, and American casualties kept climbing. Political pressure mounted, and the Army Ordnance Department was forced to act. Factories shifted gears, speeding up production despite the risks. Every week lost meant more lives lost in Europe. The Pershing was no longer just a concept. It had become a lifeline, the weapon that might restore balance in tank warfare.
The M26 Pershing finally emerged, a machine that promised to change everything. Armed with a 90mm gun and thick armor, it could finally challenge the German big cats on equal ground. But there was a catch. It arrived in Europe only in early 1945, with the war already nearing its end. For the men who had fought so long in fragile Shermans, it was bittersweet. Salvation had come, but many wondered if it had come too late to make a real difference.
In February 1945, the first Pershings rolled onto European soil. Shipped across the Atlantic under tight schedules, they arrived in small numbers, just 20 tanks at first. To the American crews who saw them, it was like spotting a mythical beast of their own. Compared to the Shermans they had relied on, the Pershing looked like a true heavyweight: thicker armor, a larger gun, and a low, menacing profile. Soldiers gathered around them, touching the steel as if to reassure themselves that this machine was real and not just another rumor from the brass.
For the crews assigned to the Pershing, emotions swung between excitement and doubt. Many felt relief at finally having a weapon that could face German heavy armor without immediate fear of annihilation. Others were cautious, wondering if this new tank would live up to the promise. After months of relying on Shermans that too often went up in flames, trust did not come easily. Yet, when soldiers climbed into the Pershing's spacious turret and laid hands on the powerful 90mm gun, a new sense of confidence began to build.
Deploying the Pershing was not simple. Spare parts were limited, and crews had little training with the new machine. Mechanics worked tirelessly to understand its quirks, while commanders debated how to use it effectively in combat. With only a handful available, every Pershing became precious. Losing even one would be a heavy blow, not just in firepower but in morale. The crews knew they were sitting in more than a tank. They were carrying America's last hope of meeting the Germans on equal ground.
As the Pershings rumbled toward the front lines, anticipation filled the air. Allied soldiers wanted to see if this new tank could truly stand against the Tigers and Panthers that had haunted them for so long. German crews, meanwhile, had yet to even realize a challenger was coming. The battlefield was about to host a duel of steel and fire, and when it happened, both sides would be stunned. The stage was set for a confrontation that would mark one of the war's most dramatic tank encounters.
By the spring of 1945, rumors swept through American units. A new tank had finally arrived, one that could meet the dreaded Tiger on equal ground. The M26 Pershing was no longer just a promise. It was rolling toward the front. Soldiers whispered with anticipation, while German tankers, unaware of what awaited them, still believed their Tigers were unchallenged kings of the battlefield. The stage was set for a dramatic first encounter that would shake both sides.
It happened near the small towns along the Rhine, where Pershings were sent forward to support infantry under heavy German resistance. As the column advanced, the dreaded silhouette appeared. A Tiger, its broad turret scanning the fields, its 88mm gun already poised. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Sherman crews had been trained to fear this sight, but Pershing crews gripped their controls with determination. They finally had a weapon that could bite back.
Both tanks halted, scanning for advantage. The Tiger fired first, its round tearing across the field and slamming into a Pershing's frontal armor. Dust and sparks erupted, but the shell ricocheted, something unheard of in Sherman battles.
Inside the Pershing, the crew felt the shock, but realized they were still alive. For the first time, American tankers experienced the thrill of surviving a Tiger's opening strike. Their fear turned instantly into fierce determination. The Pershing's gunner steadied the crosshairs and squeezed the trigger. The 90mm cannon roared, sending a shell straight into the Tiger's side. The German giant shuddered under the impact, its crew momentarily stunned. Another shot followed, this time piercing deep. Flames licked from the hatches, and the once invincible Tiger began to burn. Allied soldiers nearby erupted in cheers. It was the first time many had seen a Tiger destroyed in a fair duel. For the German crew, the encounter was surreal. The Tiger, once a weapon of fear, had just been brought down by an enemy tank they hadn't even known existed weeks earlier. Survivors staggered from the wreck, stunned at the reality that their armor was no longer untouchable. On the American side, the psychological impact was just as powerful. For the first time, they felt they had a true equalizer, a machine that could face the Tiger head-on and win. The battlefield had changed, and both sides knew it.
The streets of Cologne in early 45 were a chaotic labyrinth of rubble, fire, and shattered buildings. As the Pershings rolled into the city, Allied forces braced for German resistance. Unknown to many, a squad of Tigers lay in wait, their crews determined to defend the city at any cost. Narrow streets and ruined structures amplified tension. Every corner could hide death. Soldiers gripped their weapons tightly, knowing that urban combat would amplify both strategy and terror. The first shot rang out from a hidden Tiger turret. Its 88mm shell slammed into a wall near a Pershing, sending bricks and dust into the air. The American crews responded instantly, maneuvering with precision despite the cramped streets. Tanks exchanged fire, engines roared, and debris flew everywhere. For a moment, it seemed as if the city itself was alive with violence. The clash became a test of tactics, courage, and split-second decisions. Every second could decide who lived or died. One Pershing found a firing angle and aimed at the Tiger's exposed side. Its 90mm shell tore through the armor, igniting fuel and ammunition inside. Flames shot out of the turret, and the German crew scrambled to escape. Witnessing the destruction, nearby Allied soldiers felt a surge of triumph and relief. The moment confirmed that Pershings could not only survive against Tigers, but also destroy them, even in the dangerous confines of urban combat. The shock on German faces was palpable. Their once feared urban stronghold was crumbling under tanks they could not match. Meanwhile, American crews felt a surge of confidence and pride. The Pershing's success in Cologne became a turning point, proving that the balance of power had shifted. Both sides now understood that the war's final months would not be decided by fear alone. Steel and tactics had begun to speak louder. For German tank crews, the first encounters with the Pershing were nothing short of a nightmare. Their Tigers, once symbols of invincibility, were now vulnerable to an enemy they had barely heard of. Survivors described a surreal mix of fear and disbelief as Pershings destroyed Tigers at ranges they hadn't considered dangerous. Veteran crews, who had once relished the confidence their armor provided, now faced the unsettling reality that their advantage had evaporated overnight. The psychological blow was immediate. German commanders realized that their tactics, built on the idea of unbeatable heavy armor, were now outdated. Some crews panicked, making fatal mistakes in combat. Others attempted desperate maneuvers, trying to exploit terrain or urban cover to survive. This mix of fear, improvisation, and confusion underscored the Pershing's impact, not just physically on the battlefield, but mentally on the men who had once ruled it. By the end of the first engagements, German crews understood a chilling truth. The Pershing had leveled the playing field. Their legendary status was no longer absolute, and the battlefield now demanded caution, respect, and adaptation. For many, this was the first time in the war that their faith in invincibility was shattered. The first Pershing victories sent shockwaves through German armored divisions. For years, Tiger crews had been confident that no Allied tank could stand against them, but now that illusion was shattered. Reports arrived from the front lines describing Tigers destroyed in minutes by these new American machines. Officers pored over maps and engagement reports, struggling to understand how a tank introduced so late could undermine decades of tactical doctrine. The psychological blow was immediate and profound. German tankers, once emboldened by the Tiger's fearsome reputation, now hesitated. Many fought with caution, double-checking angles, avoiding open fields, and relying heavily on cover. Fear and uncertainty replaced confidence, and hesitation slowed unit responses. Even experienced crews made mistakes, misjudging Pershing positions or underestimating their firepower. This invisible shift, where fear outweighed aggression, changed the dynamic of every engagement.
High-ranking officers scrambled to adapt. Standard tactics based on armor superiority no longer applied, and strategies that had worked flawlessly for years failed under the Pershings' threat. Some units were pulled back, reassigned to defensive positions, or forced to rely on ambushes. Every decision carried weight. A single mistake could mean the loss of a Tiger and the lives of its crew. The introduction of the Pershing forced Germans to rethink the very foundation of their armored warfare doctrine. The presence of Pershings didn't just affect isolated battles, it had ripple effects across entire divisions. Unit commanders became risk-averse, delaying offensives, and reacting more cautiously to Allied movements. German armored confidence, once a defining factor on the battlefield, was replaced by apprehension and overcalculation. The Pershing had achieved a psychological victory even before it faced every Tiger, proving that warfare was as much about perception as firepower. American soldiers watched in awe as the Pershings proved their worth on the battlefield. For months, they had felt vulnerable, knowing their Shermans could be shredded by Tigers and Panthers. Now, seeing the 90mm gun pierce German armor and leave once-feared Tigers burning, morale surged. Crews who had been tense, wary, and cautious suddenly felt a renewed sense of confidence. The Pershing was more than a tank. It was a symbol of hope, a tangible sign that the Allies could finally fight on equal terms.
For Pershing crews, every engagement was electrifying. Surviving a battle with a Tiger and emerging victorious triggered an intense mix of adrenaline and pride. Veterans spoke of the feeling as almost addictive, the thrill of finally matching their enemies shot for shot. Training exercises became opportunities to master the tank's capabilities, and every successful maneuver reinforced confidence. The psychological weight of previous fear lifted, replaced by a sense of invincibility they had never experienced in Sherman tanks. The boost wasn't limited to tank crews. Infantry units operating alongside Pershings felt safer advancing into contested areas. Operations that had been slow, hesitant, and cautious now moved with determination. Soldiers spoke openly of hope returning to the front lines, and rumors of Pershing success spread rapidly. Morale improved not just because of firepower, but because the presence of a Pershing meant they were no longer at the mercy of German heavy armor. Beyond individual battles, the Pershing became a symbol of momentum and inevitability. Its victories demonstrated that German tanks were no longer unstoppable. Commanders adjusted strategies to incorporate these new strengths, and units gained a renewed aggressiveness. The psychological impact rippled across divisions, creating an environment where Allied forces felt not just capable, but dominant. In a war defined by fear, steel, and courage, the Pershing had shifted the balance both physically and mentally. By the time Pershings reached significant numbers in Europe, the war was already in its final months. The Allies were pushing deep into German territory, and the Luftwaffe was largely grounded. While the Pershing proved it could defeat Tigers and Panthers, it arrived too late to decisively alter the course of the conflict. Soldiers recognized the bittersweet reality. Their new weapon was a game-changer, but one whose full potential could never be realized in time. Despite its late arrival, the Pershing's presence had profound effects. German armored confidence was shattered, and Allied morale soared. The psychological and symbolic power of finally matching and defeating heavy German tanks cannot be understated. For veterans who had survived months in Shermans, the Pershing represented validation, security, and pride, proof that technology and strategy could overcome fearsome legends.
Historians would later note that the Pershing was less a war-winning weapon than a harbinger of modern armored warfare. It foreshadowed post-war tank designs and demonstrated the psychological importance of technological parity. While it did not turn the tide of World War II, its legacy endured, marking the first time the Allies had a tank that could face German heavy armor without fear. The M26 Pershing became a symbol of what it meant to finally achieve parity with Germany's legendary tanks. Soldiers and commanders alike recognized that the era of invincible German armor had ended. The Pershing represented the culmination of American engineering, strategy, and determination, showing that innovation could overcome fearsome reputations. Its psychological impact extended far beyond individual battles, altering the mindset of both sides and reshaping perceptions of armored warfare. The lessons learned from the Pershing's design and battlefield performance influenced post-war tank development worldwide. Its combination of armor, firepower, and mobility became a blueprint for future main battle tanks. Military engineers studied its strengths and weaknesses, integrating innovations into next-generation designs. In many ways, the Pershing was a bridge between World War II tank warfare and the modern era of armored combat. For the men who fought in Pershings, the tank remained a source of pride and legend. It had given them confidence, protection, and the chance to confront their fears. Today, the Pershing is remembered not only for its technical achievements, but also for its role in reshaping battlefield psychology and armored warfare. Its story remains a testament to ingenuity, courage, and the relentless drive to overcome seemingly impossible odds.